Blessed love and peace. Still at this. On the topic of mixedness and blackedness and onedness, ek onkar and such. Already blessed. So, basically, doing is very simple. Beyond the questions and the accusations, even the history, the genuine and the real question is, who are the real ones? Plain and simple. Who are the real ones? Who are the real ones amidst mixed folk? Who are the real ones amidst black folk? Who are the real ones amidst white folk, yellow folk, red folk, brown folk, orange folk, all folk? There are real ones in each one, yes. Don't believe the hype. Now, that's it, plain and simple. Who are the real ones? And we each have to find that for ourselves. And we find that by finding it within ourselves first and being real ourselves first, being honest, being knowledgeable, being thorough. And when we are that, as much as we can be, by the grace of the Most High, it's easier to see it and see it absent within others, as the case may be. To what degree? That's the basic question. Across the board, particularly today. Because at just real talk, everybody needs everybody. All type of folk need all type of folk. And all these, like, we don't mess with da-da-da bullshit. Look at the language you're speaking. Look at the technology you're utilizing. Be real. Be actual about this life today. Everybody builds from everybody. That's just facts. And people who deny that are living delusion. Everyone got delusion to some extent. But it's like intentional ignorance. And that's being stuck on stupid. And then expecting others to be too. And that's black, white, across the board. Plain and simple, who are the real ones? And recognize that there are real ones. Now, for black folk, what we recognize within ourselves and within history is that there's been a long time, many generations, centuries of lies. Lies through torture, being tortured with lies, beat with lies, fed with lies, raped with lies, embraced with lies, and all this other type of stuff. So there needs to be, and there effectively is a coping mechanism, which is a wall, a border, a barrier that just says, I ain't trying to hear none of it. But what it is actually saying is like, I'm trying to hear as little of it as possible because I need to hear some of it just to be in this life at this moment. But the basic thing is like shutting everything down. Whoa, just self-protection. It's too much. So that's seen. However, but also has to be recognized at some point in order to experience true liberation in this earthly realm. There has to be honesty. There has to be not just the slight reduction of that barrier and that wall. That depends upon how liberated kinfolk want to be. But like full liberation means full lowering of that wall. That doesn't necessarily mean everybody. That's not necessarily for everybody at every moment, but that's what it is. But point here is that in order to be at the table of the world, to sit at the table of the world as a sovereign person, as a sovereign people, you gotta let go of those protective imaginings, those coping mechanisms of plantation life and further. And that's not hate, that's not shade, that's not disrespect. That's facts. All peoples have to go through that. All peoples have been in the experience of affliction and enslavement and have had gone through a process of upliftment out of that, one way or another. And so there's certain things that we have, like when a kinfolk is sick, give them some things that have some fat, and this, that, and the other. Help them out with the nourishment and just comfort, and that's tough. But when people feed on that as a regular diet, am I talking? That ain't the healthy. That ain't what keep people fit. That ain't what keep people blah, 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 all that. It ain't that. So we have to recognize that in a political, cultural, spiritual, economic, philosophical, all that respect, that these things that are utilized to protect ourselves from the lies and the bullshit, in order for us to progress proficiently, basically at all, in the world sphere as independent sovereigns, it requires lowering those walls. And so, what am I talking about in terms of lowering the walls? Just part of it is just getting beyond just like these rote binaries of division based upon superficial aesthetics, and that's part of it. That's like a very small part of it. But the further, deeper part of it is knowing how to discriminate, knowing how to discern within others the valuable characteristics, ethics, and discipline within others, rather than just having these questions about, is this person down for the cause or whatever else. It's a matter of like, what does this person know? What does this person practice? What is this person about? So it's, again, relearning, remembering what the questions are, what the criteria, the genuine criteria is. Because truth be told, as kinfolk already know, black folk are at black folk. And it's not even a question about whether kinfolk are black, but still scheming and doing all types of dirt and grime on each other. So being black in and of itself don't mean a whole lot. All different types of cats can be down for the cause. All different types of cats can be knowledgeable about the cause. And you can't call them out on that because they got it nice. And meanwhile, they're prostituting women, they're running up in women, they're enslaving brethren, they're betraying brethren, they're selling out brethren to white folk, black folk, yellow folk, and all folk when the opportunity arises. So just that whole separation and gatekeeping methodologies ain't the most accurate, ain't the most effective, and ain't the most enduring. So the point is to recognize what is the priority characteristics within people, and to recognize that that exists within all different types of people. And that's, I guess, what I'm going to in terms of lowering the walls. Lowering the walls means getting off the whole white people are devils, this, that, and the other. The devil is, when keep folk like revert to that, again, they're closing an eye significantly of recognizing the devil in black folk and the devil within what black folk do. Now, from our point, we share all kinfolk are children of God, and God don't make no mistakes, and God don't like ugly. But sometimes kinfolk lose sight of what ugly is and get caught up in the masks. So that's some of what we're talking about here. But letting down some of that wall means to recognize that there's truth within all different parts. And not only that, but that we feed off that truth of the parts of others in today. What that mean? What's going on with that? One second. As I said before, the technology, the knowledge, and otherwise. Black folk feed from white folk feed from black folk. Red, yellow, brown, orange, across the board. People are feeding from each other. So it's not just a matter of, is there some kind of legitimacy within other people's? Is there a truth within other people's? That's not even the question. The question and the recognition is how much you are at this moment feeding from that truth. So when any kinfolk try to discount, discredit, devalue, demonize categorically an entire people, they're undermining the things that are feeding them at this very moment. Body, mind, heart, and spirit. So that's what we're talking about. And the falsity of all these box plantation politics. And yes, there's evil that is done. The devil is within everybody, truth be told. Facts. Those are spiritual facts. We can reason on that, but the devil is in everybody. Everyone is a child of God, and the devil is in everybody. And then we have to be watched out for that within ourselves, particularly, most definitely, most prioritedly. Yes, prioritedly is a word. Look it up. You might have to find a number of books. You might have to write a number of books. But it's here. So, letting down the wall, not necessarily all the way, but just enough to let the truth shine in. And that's necessary. A lot of that coping mechanism has just been a way of being insulated within that experience of plantation and continue to be shut off from what's going on in the world, the wisdom of the world. And additionally, it's a scary thing, it's an intimidating thing, it's an overwhelming thing in many ways. It's like getting a late start in school for whatever reason and seeing like everybody else is like way ahead in the readings and like there's no way I can catch up. Oh man, I'm like I won't even want to try, because if I try, that means I am like accepting, buying into like these imbalances, like, so might as well just like do my own thing. That ain't doing it. Recognize everybody is at the same level, all things considered, but we gotta find out, because everybody's trying to put their best face forward and like promote what they got going on and hide what they ain't got going on. But again, we gotta have some kind of trust in a power and a purpose greater than ourselves to have that perspective, time wise, space wise, all wise, all ways. Shout out to my mama, my more, with some cornbread, even vegan cornbread. What up? Blessings upon blessings, and all thanks and praise to the Most High. So, ain't even putting no butter on it. And the agua is agua. What that mean? Look it up. So, it's you again, huh? It's the squat sparrow. I can tell. There's a sparrow here a few days ago with her sister and would not eat for herself. Was always expecting her sister to feed her. And now this is so trippy. I wrote a word about it. Like to hear it. Here you go. It's already written. But anyways, there's two sisters. Female sparrows are light brown, and the one sister was squat and acting like a baby, to be honest, just like having beak open and just like beak, beak, chirp, 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 feed me, chirp, chirp, chirp. The rice is right there, easy pickings. All the other sparrows are eating directly. But the sister would take some rice and feed the other sister, back and forth, back and forth. Eventually, like, the sister left, the one that was doing the feeding, and the one sister that was just left there, chirp, chirp, beak open. The other sparrows are ignoring her. At one point, one of the sparrows was like, "Yo, get out the way! I'm trying to eat here." And then immediately when the squat sparrow was nudged, then the squat sparrow kind of just like gets into normal mode and then starts eating. So that was a story a few days ago, earlier this week. Now today I see the sparrow again, the two sisters, and the squat sparrow is eating for herself today, further normal. So whatever lens I'm looking at that with, there's a certain sense of a further experience of peace and whatever. But it also is like trippy, like, come on, y'all, this is too obvious. This is too Dr. Doolittle type stuff. Like, it feels like too humanistic. It feels too close. Like somebody's paying attention. Some of these are drones. This is all programmed. This is all psychological. Of course it is. Anyway, so it's about lowering the walls in order to be at the table. The walls are here for a reason, strong reason, but at the same time, there are things in our lives and things in our collective life, long-term, multi-generational life, that become less necessary, that become less beneficial, that become further a liability in terms of what is needed in this generation, in this day. So that's what we're talking about. I'm not going to get into the whole doomsday thing about, oh, get your act together, because that's across the board in different ways. But at the basic thing is just real ones. That's the basic thing, and to recognize, again, there's been a protective wall of just saying all such and such is evil, because that's significantly what is observed, and that's seen in terms of the affliction and then the response to the affliction. But at the same time, if that's genuinely the case, stop speaking English. And now, this is not hate, but just like if kinfolk genuinely believe that, like Europe or whatever is categorically, fundamentally, inherently evilness, then the simple logic would be to not speak English and to learn something else, and to refuse to speak English until learning something else. If it's that deep and if it's that honest, that's the solution. And that's not shade, that's just facts. That's just very pure, very easy logic. And that's what we're talking about, because when that's recognized, then it's a matter of recognizing, okay, this is a coping mechanism. And there's a lot of necessity within it, because there is a lot of bullshit and atrocities that are coming from this experience of Eurocentrism and otherwise. But at the same time, like, how much are kinfolk attached to it? How much are kinfolk eating the fat, eating the niceties from it as well? And that's where the duplicity or the dishonesty exists within oneself, of how much one buys into what the plantation is serving, and then doubling down on lambasting the plantation instead of getting off the plantation. That's where it's on oneself, plain and simple. That's facts. And when people don't want to recognize it, try to hide from it, and collectively hide from it, and then double down further on accusing other people who address that. Easy to call out white people who try to say something, because white people have very little foundations to criticize anybody on this continent particularly. So it's easy to do that, clap back at that. That's fine. And if somebody else who's brown skin or whatever else, oh, sell out, he's trying to be wannabe. But again, it's just shots as a way of covering up what's going on within oneself. So the real ones, when we find our knowledge of self proficiently and increasingly, continually, then we're able to better see the real ones within others, the realness in life and universe, and the purpose. All right, wrap up with this joint. Um, White bread, cornbread. Talking about being black. What he know? Mix it up, yeah, right. Um, ooh, voila. That's the cardinal right there. Come on now. Trying to navigate a big old crumb of pita bread. All day. And that's Mrs. Cardinal making a brief appearance. People talk about Mrs. Cardinal, Miss Cardinal, looking duller, her color being duller. It's not as bright and popping red like Mr. Cardinal. But when you see Miss Cardinal and that shimmy shimmy, that shiny shiny, that glimmer glimmer up close, it's like, yo, it's layers upon layers of shine. So anyway, Mr. Cardinal already know that. Continuing on. Letting the walls down somewhat, understanding why the walls are there, and seeing the realness within other ones. Being able to discern, differentiate the real ones from the fake ones within others. And I go back to the trope that I say before about recognizing. When we recognize, when we study the game, the world game, strong enough, what we recognize, what we're able to see is that what happens in the Western Hemisphere, what happens in the past 500 years, what happens with the triangle trade and everything else like that, it's not a European thing exclusively or even primarily. It's an imperialism thing. And this is not like brown folk apologetics and trying to like take away the blame or take away the guilt or take away the attention. It's understanding the nature of the motherfucking game. The motherfucking game. Imperialism, the motherfucking game. And it's beyond color. It's straight up selfishness, greed, hate, delusion, confusion, temptation itself. When people reduce it to just a color, then people get lax in being able to evidence it outside of that particular color. Facts, truth. And it's easier to be a slave. So, when we study the game of imperialism through the millennia, we recognize where it exists and further how it exists, how it evolves. We recognize much of the experience of imperialism that exists today emerges from the confluence of the migrations, particularly from the middle grounds that has a knowledge about the behavior and the manipulation about the different cultures, studies it, learns from the different parts of it, and then learns how to conquer, manipulate, enslave, subordinate, indebt others of it. You can call it Judaism, you can call it Islam, you can call it Christianity, you can call it Hindu, Buddhist, and otherwise. The middle area accumulates that knowledge through the course of history and then applies it particularly towards the extremes, Africa as well as Europe, which tend to be further residing in a primordial experience. People can call it paganism, hedonism, or whatever else. It's a further immediate relationship with nature, and less, not an absolute absence from, but a less emphasis on the experience of civilization, of worldly knowledge. And it has its pluses and minuses across the board. And in that, to recognize the imposition of imperialism upon Africa long before people are even looking at Europe. And when people do look at Europe, recognize the imposition of imperialism upon Europe, and how through the centuries of back and forth between the Mediterranean and Northern Europe, there is a gradual balancing, still much conflict, all the different types of wars, even just between France and Deutschland and England, Scandinavia, at each other. Eventually, all of this angst and whatever is transplanted onto the Western Hemisphere, this hemisphere where I'm sitting right now in Ohio. And it has a white face on it. But it's other than a white nature. The methodology of it is drawing, as people can readily recognize, from a Greco-Roman Judeo-Christian politics and religiosity, and additionally, all of that is not European. All of that it's not European. It's Mediterranean, and it's very different. So, the imperialism uses a white face, the white mental wheels, quote unquote white, the European mental wheels, and additionally, much like the imperialism utilizes African bodies. It's different types. It's mental enslavement and it's physical enslavement. And then it's binaries and it's division. That's what imperialism does. Pimping white people to think of self-superiority. But in doing that, enslavement, insecurity, instability, and high dependency on that notion of superiority and maintaining that. And thus, because of that, being susceptible to different types of manipulation, guilt tripping, original sin, and otherwise. And here's the proof of superiority: black folk. So then, easy divide and conquer methodology. And talk about I can go on and on about this as well, about all the different, perceiving Jesus as white and this, that, and the other. I mean, that speaks for itself in terms of the falsities. But at the same time, it's only natural for people to self-project these notions. You can hate people for not just loving themselves, but being egotistical. Everybody does that. So, anyways, I'm plain and simple, the real ones, and recognize there are real ones in each one, and how to discern who those real ones are. Not easy. Cat's got lots of fronts. European kinfolk got layers and layers of facades, and additionally pretenses. And it's tenacious to get through to find a trustworthy semblance of authenticity. But again, it's not even a question about anybody else. It's a question about ourselves. Ultimately. So that's a basic gist. Half an hour in. That's supposed to be 2 minutes. The other joint is that something about mixed folk. Something. There are other things too, but yeah, we got work to do, and it's not a work day. We're off the work day, but we're still working to complete a project. So it's still imposing upon the daily routine. Don't see sleep in the eye, but that don't necessarily mean that salat is performed today. So still working on that. It is Juma. What else? Real ones. I was talking yesterday about something about geopolitics, China, indigeneity, and otherwise. So there's something about mixed heritage that fits into that, but for the moment, I should continue at this point because there's less productivity happening at this moment in this joint. So the endeavor of recollecting another thought to share specifically at this moment seems further less happening. So has something to do with being mixed. Something about something. So, excuse me, at this point, something about language. I know I talked about that yesterday evening amidst that scenario again of nearly sleep talking. Blah 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 blah. I think we're gonna leave it as it is at this point and continue on with our tasks for this day, God willing, and give all thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Bless, love, and peace in Rastafari.